This is our vitamin class, and we kind of invited everybody to this because this is we don't do it as often as other classes. The purpose of this is for you to learn what supplements are, what they're good for, what they do, what they don't do, and which ones you should take and which ones you shouldn't take and how you should take them. And it's something that everybody should learn. Why? Well, you're going to learn about that, and that's why I put together a slide presentation, is so that you could learn about the fact that the same tactics used by drug companies are often used by vitamin companies to push a vitamin on more people than actually need that vitamin. And so there's a specific one we're going to talk about. So. Avoiding expensive urine is a reference to not taking too much of something more than you need. So, and just looking at what is the need. So let's look at the various vitamins. I had a woman come in one time. Her name was Hilda, and she had 2 trash bags full of bottles. And she said, I want to know, how to take these and everything. I said, where'd you get all these? She says, well, I'm a member of Life Extension, and they send me a magazine, and they have an article on vitamins every month, and every time I read the article, I go, oh, I need that. And then I buy it, because the very next page is the catalog on how to obtain that vitamin or mineral or supplement or whatever it is. So we took out all these, and she had redundant ones, this on top of that, on top of that, just like so much. I said, you don't need all of that. And she said, well, which ones do I need? And she's in her 80s. She's very healthy, very active. And I said, well, how much time does this take you? She said, oh, easily 40 hours a week. I said, 40 hours a week of either reading about or buying or organizing or taking all of these vitamins, and she spent a lot of time on this. And I said, well, do you have better things to do with your time? She says, yeah. I said, okay, let's like pare this down. So that's kind of what I'd like to do with you, and that's what the reference to avoiding expensive urine. A lot of people spend a whole lot of money on vitamins that may not be fully necessary. So why do you take vitamins? Anyone in here? Why do you take vitamins? Why?
Well, because in my scan of my metabolism showed I have a genetic deficiency, and so I have to compensate for those things which protect either my liver or my kidneys.
That's
Something very essential.
That's a great reason to supplement your diet, right? Anyone else?
I was feeling terrible, and I didn't know why, and I wanted to boost my immunity.
Okay, feeling bad, boosting immunity, boosting energy, because you don't feel energetic or normal, or not feeling well.
Building the bone density back.
Building the bone density back. So you did a test, and the test says, oh, you have osteoporosis, or you fractured a bone or something, and you need something to build it back. Yes.
And bad diet.
Bad diet. Okay. I'm not eating well. You know what? I'm not really getting a lot of nutrients from my food. I better take some vitamins. Right? Yes.
Just society in general, like those seasons, and you try to get an immune system, mineral or vitamin C or something, so you try to take as much as you can that season.
Right. So boosting something specific. It's flu season, and I need vitamin D and vitamin C to prevent or diminish this flu. I don't want to get sick, kind of thing. Yes?
To compensate for depleted soils.
Compensate for depleted soils. So that's mostly a mineral thing. The minerals in the soils are somewhat depleted, anywhere from 5 to 25% depending on the food. Less than in the 1930s when they first started doing measurements of minerals in foods, like broccoli specifically. There was another hand, yes?
Subject to persuasion. Usually a friend says, oh, you don't do this.
Good, thank you. That's another really important one. So persuasion by a friend or by an article that you read or something like that. Wow, this is really important. I better buy this. Yes?
Poor absorption. I have to take magnesium because if I don't, I get serious muscle cramps.
Okay.
And
so your intestines aren't working right, there's inflammation, you have celiac disease, you have other potential problems that you're not absorbing food, so you've got to supplement that to get more in. So all these are excellent reasons, and these are the things that we take supplements for. Sometimes all of the above at different times in our lives. So that's why. So various kinds of vitamins. One is antioxidants. And the purpose of antioxidants is to prevent oxidation. So what does antioxidant do? Well, antioxidant kicks out the free radicals. So these are the free radicals, and that's antioxidant. And what they do is they have a donor, and the free radical is missing an electron. And if that free radical that's missing an electron bumps into DNA or protein or something really important, it will cause it to become oxidized, and it will destroy it or damage it. So what the antioxidant does is, I got a whole bunch of extra ones, and I'm going to give it to you, so that completely neutralizes that free radical. And that's how antioxidant kicks out the free radicals.
So the free radicals steal the antioxidants?
Well, yes, they steal one of the electrons from the antioxidant, and the free radical gets it and neutralizes it.
Why do they have unpaired electrons in the first place?
Because whenever energy is made, you have a carbohydrate, for example. You have a carbohydrate, that's sugar, just plain sugar. When you break that in half, one of the electrons is taken away that makes a neutral oxygen species, because they're not sharing that electron anymore, and now you have one left over that doesn't have it. So it's going, uh-oh, where does that happen? And it's an oxygen molecule, because the oxygen has 6. The oxygen molecule is usually the one that ends up without that electron. So that becomes an oxygen-free radical species, and that's what oxidation comes from. Okay, so this is a partial list of known antioxidants. There's a test at the end, so make sure you memorize this for the quiz. So, how many of you think that you can take one pill of each one of these? No, I mean, think about it. If you had to take, like every time you heard about another antioxidant, you go, oh, I need that one, I gotta take that. So you're taking your vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, coenzyme Q10, manganese, you go through the whole list. You end up taking all these pills to get all of the antioxidants that you need. But is that the purpose for antioxidants? Or is that the best way to get them? Well, it turns out the best way to get them is from food. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So, how many of you take antioxidant vitamins? Good. Okay. Why?
Slow down, agent.
I was Dr. Salcedo recommended that I take quercetin for food allergies.
Exactly. Okay. So when you have a specific need, then you take antioxidant vitamins. So a lot of people, prostate problems, again, poor absorption through the intestines, some inflammatory condition, arthritis, things like that. There are good reasons to take antioxidant vitamins. But it is not necessary for everyone to take all of them all the time. And making sure you have enough is good. And having too much is not necessarily good. So, yes?
How do you know how much is enough?
How do you know how much is too much? That is the big question, right? Or enough, right. So if you have an issue with oxidation, if you have an inflammatory issue or something like that, there are certain antioxidants that are actually very good for that. Turmeric was mentioned, curcumin. Vitamin C is often used. Vitamin E is an antioxidant. Vitamin A and vitamin E are antioxidants in the fat tissue. And vitamin C and curcumin and lipoic acid are in the water-soluble tissue. So there are different places where those are done. Oxidation happens every time an energy reaction happens. So when you eat something, you're making a certain amount of energy, and an average of 4 reactions every time when you're making a change in energy. So it changes from protein to sugar to various stages to ATP, and you're seeing this, and each time you're getting an oxygen-free radical. So we are told that it is absolutely impossible to get all the antioxidants you need from your food. Right? Isn't that what we're told?
Yeah.
Has anyone ever heard that before?
Because of the soil and all that too.
Yeah, that you can't get it from your food. You have to take vitamins in order to get it. Well, the truth of that is, if you are eating a 3,000 calorie a day diet, a little above average for Americans, 2,700 I think is about average for Americans, so close to 3,000. If you're eating that many calories, the more calories you eat, you're getting 4 times more oxygen-free radicals each one-time increase in calories, because you're having to convert that through several phases. So if you take antioxidants, you're only getting 1 time more in the food. So you're getting, so you're eating more food, you're getting 4 times more free radicals and 1 time more antioxidants. 4 times more free radicals and 1 time. Can you see how it's absolutely impossible for you to ever get enough antioxidants from your food to neutralize the free radicals that you're making? And that's absolutely true. So you have 2 options. Always there's 2 options, right? One option is increase the number of antioxidants that you take, right? Like taking pills. What's your other option?
Decrease intake.
Decrease the amount of calories. Yeah, and you know what? That works really well, because remember, every decrease in calories, 1 time decrease, you're getting 4 times fewer oxygen-free radicals. Boom, 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 and until you reach a level somewhere around 1,200 calories a day, when it's very easy to get enough of the antioxidants that you need from your food. As long as you're eating good food. If you're eating salads and fruits and vegetables. It turns out that all of the things that we were told that have antioxidants, they have to have color in them. Like celery. Excuse me? Beta carotene. All the carotenoids are found in colors, right? And the zeaxanthins and astaxanthins and the dark blueberries and the tomatoes. Tomatoes have the lutein in them. Those are all colors, right? And those are great antioxidants, but that's not all of them by far. Most of these have no color in them at all. And celery has a really good antioxidant potential. And people go, celery is just water and fiber and nothing else. Not true. Iceberg lettuce, we were always told, that's useless stuff. It doesn't even have any color in it. Well, actually, there are several things that are in iceberg lettuce that lower blood pressure and decrease inflammation, and it has a good antioxidant potential. They actually have a score called an ORAC score of a food's ability to absorb oxygen-free radicals. And of course, there are those deep color ones. Blueberries are great. They have a really high ORAC score. And there's other kinds of goji berries and there was another fruit, a mangosteen. What's that?
Acai berries.
Oh, acai, yeah. Those are really good too. So some have a much higher of this ability to absorb free radicals than others. But this is that if we eat less calories, fewer calories, allows us to get enough antioxidants from our food, as long as we're eating foods that contain them, which would generally be natural foods, right? And raw foods tend to have more, but not necessarily. Okay, how many of you have ever taken resveratrol? Okay, the reason we took resveratrol, I have, the reason we took it is because of this. Bill Sardi is a president of a company that makes resveratrol, and this is what he said. Resveratrol is an antidepressant, anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, anti-cancer, cholesterol lowering, liver cleansing, brain enhancing molecule. If Americans embraced resveratrol pills en masse, many prescription drugs would not be needed. Okay. Right?
Sounds good.
Sounds good, huh? Sounds like the magical pill. In fact, the research that was done on this showed that the mice could eat anything they want. They were poorly fed mice. They were living on processed carbohydrates and everything. And if they gave them resveratrol, they didn't get diabetes. They didn't age.
French mice.
What's that?
They were French mice.
Yeah, they were French. They were not French mice. It turns out they were American mice, and the research that was done wasn't quite up to par. So the University of Connecticut found evidence that Das, the guy doing the research, fabricated and falsified the data that showed that the mice could eat anything they wanted and still still be protected from heart disease and not get fat and not get cancer and not die. So it turns out that part of it was fabricated. So is resveratrol useless? No, it's an antioxidant. It's great as an antioxidant. It's just not the magic pill that they said it was.
No.
It's not, there's no magic in it. It's not really like I can eat anything that I want and take resveratrol and be good. That's what they told us, right? Not true. Okay. Yes.
Isn't it found in red wine?
It's found in red wine. It's in the skin of the grapes. Is the highest. There's a lot of other foods that have it, but it's concentrated more in the skin of the grapes. And the amount of resveratrol that they were showing in the studies was you would have to drink like 25 bottles of wine. I forgot what it was. I think it was 11 bottles of wine in order to get enough to eat the equivalent amount of what the mice were getting, kind of thing. So, but resveratrol is an antioxidant. It does work in what it does in preventing oxygen-free radicals from forming, preventing damage to DNA. Yes. But what it's not is a magic pill. So the reason I brought this up was the point about supplements being the magic pill. How many of you have heard, whether it's resveratrol or fish oil or vitamin C, or turmeric, maritime pine bark extract is pycnogenol, right? And they come in these multi-level marketing people come to you and say this is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread and everybody's going to live forever if they take it, and you know, you've heard that, right?
Yes.
Yes.
How about alpha-lipoic acid or
Alpha lipoic acid, ALA. See, alpha lipoic acid is on our list of antioxidants, and it's a wonderful one. It has the benefit of being both lipid soluble and water soluble. It works in both compartments. It regenerates glutathione, which is also on our list, and it has wonderful activities such that people with diabetes who have neuropathy, like their nerves are dying in their feet and they're getting numbness or tingling or burning in their feet, it'll reverse that because of how powerful it is and how it works in the fat and the water compartments and increases the available glutathione. So yeah, it's wonderful for a specific purpose and in specific instances. And that's the point about all these vitamins and these things that they tell us to take. There's no magic pill. The reality is, if you have a poor diet and you're not getting the food you need, the vitamins and nutrients you need from your diet, and if you're oversupplying the calories, then you're still going to have issues to deal with that the antioxidant vitamins are not going to take care of. Okay, I'm going to talk about now minerals. Okay, there's a lot of research on minerals, and several very intelligent people have said, like Linus Pauling in the Pauling Institute and several other, that eventually what we're going to find out is that all disease comes from mineral deficiencies. And while that's not quite true, but a lot of problems that we have are mineral deficiencies, and minerals are very important. These minerals are the ones you don't want. And in no case, aluminum, antimony, arsenic, beryllium, bismuth, cadmium, lead, mercury, nickel. Nickel actually you do need a little bit. But the rest of these, platinum, you do not need a single one. You don't need even a microgram. It's not, none of these are essential. You don't have to have them. So if you have any, it might be too much. If you have a little bit, well, it's there. So when we talk about minerals and how to get rid of minerals, one of the reasons for having a very good supply of the minerals you need, which is on the next slide, is so that you can get rid of the minerals you don't need. Because one of the things that the body will do is substitute. And it's based on how much of each one is in. And this is true with any chemical reaction that's going on. When you have 10 times more of something else, then that will preferentially be used in the chemical reaction as opposed to if there's a tiny amount of something else. So if you have a little bit of lead and a whole bunch of magnesium, then the magnesium is going to preferentially be used in your mitochondria as opposed to the lead. But if you're deficient in magnesium and you have a little bit of lead, you could actually inhibit some of the normal processes of energy production just because you're deficient in magnesium. So having minerals is really important, and having a lot of them is actually really important compared to not having these. So heavy metals accumulate when you have, number one, not enough minerals, and then number two, your ability to excrete them is diminished. So you have a certain amount coming in, a certain amount going out, and if you have more going out than coming in, then you're good. It's going to go down. The levels will drop down. But if you have more coming in than going out, then your levels in your body will go up. And that's where people get problems. There's two ways to deal with that, right? Either take in less. So, if it's lead, look around, where's the source of lead, get rid of it. Mercury, get rid of it. People get their fillings removed to remove a source of mercury if their bodies aren't able to excrete it. That's why we do the test first. If you don't have any appreciable amounts and you go and start removing the mercury, you could actually increase the levels of mercury because it's stable. What's there is stable. You start removing it and disrupt it, then it starts becoming more in your body. And that's happened to people a lot. We've seen. Okay, so the minerals we test for, and this is a partial list of the minerals, the ones that we know of that are required for the body to function. And there are certain common deficiencies that people have. We're going to talk about in a minute. Okay, vitamins. There are exactly 13 vitamins recognized. 13, that's it. That's all there are anymore. So you don't. There's a lot of nutrients that are necessary for us, but these are the ones that are recognized as vitamins. And actually, what's really interesting is vitamin D is not really a vitamin. It's a hormone. It's a steroid hormone. And the reason it was called a vitamin is because they didn't know this. The sunshine was required to make it. So when people were getting rickets during the Industrial Revolution, so the Industrial Revolution, several things happened. Indoor lighting, lots of pollution in the air, and people generally moving indoors and being clothed more and not working outdoors and not being outdoors. So the levels of rickets went up and up and up. And rickets is where the bones don't have any calcium and they're real rubbery, and the legs look bowed like that, and the bones don't form properly, and they break easily too. So somebody found cod liver oil will cure rickets, and so they isolated out this vitamin D from cod liver oil and go, oh, it's a vitamin, and so they thought it was vitamin meaning vital to for sustenance, for your health, for life, vital for life. And but they didn't know at that time that it came from the sun, and now we know that that's where it comes from, the sun. So, and we're going to be talking more about that. Okay, so are vitamins toxic? Are minerals toxic?
It can be.
Everything is
Yeah.
toxic and
Exactly.
bad wines.
Exactly. Okay. You can get toxic on anything. Water is toxic if you drink too much of it. You dilute out your sodium. And I actually had somebody almost die from drinking too much water. It's you know, anything can be toxic. So what makes vitamins and minerals toxic? It's imbalance. When there isn't a balance. So your body has ways of storing and getting rid of things that are unnecessary. But what's really important with your supplements is balance. Things have to be in the proper configuration. So like I said with the vitamin C, if you take a whole bunch of vitamin C for a long period of time, you're suppressing superoxide dismutase, and now you've thrown a balance off a little bit. And so if you're taking a lot of magnesium, then you won't be absorbing as much calcium. If you're taking a lot of zinc, you won't absorb copper. If you're taking, and vice versa. If you take a whole bunch of copper, you won't absorb zinc. And you need both of them. So a lot of supplements have, you know, just everything in them. Just, okay, this is the everything supplement. Everything you need, every single antioxidants listed on there, all 13 of the vitamins and all the minerals, they're all on there. And you take one a day and that's good, right? Not necessarily. Because some absorption is inhibited by other things. So they're called divalent cations, so the minerals. If you take a lot of one, you get less of another. And so it's important to look at balance. So we're gonna look at how to achieve balance, avoid toxicity, and avoid expensive urine. That was what I promised. And so I want to tell a story first about balance. So this woman, her name is Dr. I'm blanking on her name. It'll come to me. So here she is in October 1st, 2007. She had multiple sclerosis, and in only a matter of a few years, she went from first starting multiple sclerosis to in a wheelchair, motorized wheelchair, can't even push herself around in a wheelchair, and still working as a doctor, but you know, out of her motorized wheelchair. And so she went to Cleveland Clinic. She got the best treatment. Nothing worked. She was just getting worse and worse and worse, and it was progressively declining. There's two different kinds. There's the waxing and waning, and then there's the rapid decline. She had the rapid decline, and she was not she was very active, very healthy. She was black belt in karate. She was very active. She had 2 kids. She went hiking and mountain climbing. You know, this isn't somebody who was sitting around on the couch all day. So she went to and did all the doctor things, and nothing helped at all. And so she said, well, what if I took supplements? So she started taking supplements. She's looking up, okay, do this antioxidant, that, and this thing for nerves and whatever. So she took a lot of supplements. She says this is what it would take to improve this kind of thing, multiple sclerosis. And she started taking them, and it slowed the progression, but she was still getting worse. It didn't get better. So her next step was to say, what if I took all those supplements I'm taking, I looked at them, and said, what if I ate food to get that amount of all those vitamins and minerals, antioxidants and everything? What if I ate food to get that amount? So she looked it up. It's all online, right? Doctors didn't know what it was. So she ended up with 9 cups of fruits and vegetables a day, seaweed, liver once a week, and basically that's it. That's what, and then fish was the other thing. And she said, and so she wasn't taking any more supplements, She just did it with food. And in 9 months, she was much improved, and within 1 year, she was back to normal.
Whoa. Wow.
So 9 cups of fruits and vegetables,
9?
liver, onions, and what? Fish?
Liver and fish and seaweed. And she said that's what it took. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. And so, which vitamins should I take? And okay, so common deficiencies. There are things that we commonly don't get in our food. Magnesium. The reason most people are deficient in magnesium, and by most I mean more than 60% of people in the United States are deficient in magnesium, is because magnesium comes in foods that we don't staple. We don't have like a staple. Like it comes in green vegetables, beans, nuts and seeds. We don't have any staple of nuts and seeds and beans and green vegetables. Ours is meat and processed breads and cereals and pastas, rice, corn, things that don't really contain a lot of magnesium. White rice doesn't. So, and whole grains. So whole grains have magnesium. But the things that contain a lot of magnesium are not a big part of our diet that we eat every day all the time. So, chromium. Chromium is such a common deficiency. And this is really important. There aren't a lot of foods that contain a lot of chromium, but it can be found in fresh foods, fruits and vegetables, and such. But most people have some deficiency of chromium, which is really important because chromium allows us to use sugar properly. And you can get diabetes just by having a deficiency of chromium. In fact, there was a study on selenium, which we're going to talk about, that was done in Arizona. The Arizona Cancer Study was done with selenium. And while it decreased cancer rates by about 50%, it increased diabetes rates by about 12%. And the reason is because you're taking selenium every day and you're inhibiting the absorption of chromium. And those that were on the borderline went into deficiency in the 5 years that they were taking it because they weren't absorbing, getting that little bit of chromium that they might have had otherwise. Selenium is so important, and our soils do not contain selenium.
Brazil nuts.
Yeah, Brazil nuts. We're going to talk about that. Yes?
I was going to say, I heard all Brazil nuts don't come from Brazil anymore.
I know. So plants do not need selenium. There's no plant that needs it. It's not an essential nutrient for any plant. So that we can't like say, oh, it's going to be found in Brazil nuts. Why is it in Brazil nuts? Well, because Brazil has a lot of selenium in the soil, and they only produce in Brazil. So, but not really Brazil, but I mean like that Amazon basin area. So if you bring a Brazil nut to the United States, it won't produce. Yeah, you can grow it, but it won't produce. So, and because the soil has selenium, then selenium is going to be found in the plant and in the nut and all of that. So that's why, not because the plant needs it, but just because it happens to be in the soil. Well, our soils are completely deficient in selenium. And so selenium is a very common deficiency. Why is that important? Well, how many people have thyroid problems? You have to have selenium for your thyroid to function. You can't convert the T4, the inactive thyroid, to the active hormone unless you have selenium. How many people in the United States have sugar problems? How many people have cancer? The most important antioxidant in the body, arguably, is glutathione. And glutathione requires selenium to regenerate. So without selenium, you don't have as much glutathione, and you're more likely to get oxidative damage and cancer. So, in fact, that was the Arizona Cancer Study was mostly about selenium, how selenium would affect cancer, and it was dramatic. The supplementation of only 200 micrograms a day was enough to drop the cancer rate by about 50%. So it was quite dramatic. What's really interesting, though, if you read in the Reader's Digest the selenium study, you get a completely different picture. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. And this is the other side. Remember I told you the research where they falsified the resveratrol thing? Okay, now let's look at the other side. Who's paying for this study? Well, there's drug companies paying for this study, cancer, people that do cancer chemotherapy and all that. And so they pick skin cancer. And they say, we're going to look at skin cancer and we're going to take selenium because there were some preliminary studies that show selenium might decrease cancer. Well, selenium works primarily on glutathione. Is glutathione found in the skin? No. The skin has fat-soluble vitamins, and glutathione's a water-soluble vitamin. It's not even going to be found there. So they set it up for what? Failure. It was set up for that in the first place. So guess what? They cracked the code after 5 years, and they found that selenium was pretty useless for skin cancer. So the Reader's Digest came out with this big, selenium does not help cancer. Big. It was an article, headline. The use of people are wasting you're making expensive urine by taking selenium. So you have to be careful where the research is coming from on both sides. You know, as you know, it's not simple. Vitamin B12 is a common deficiency because of absorption problems. People think they could take it sublingually. But really what they're doing when they do it sublingually, they're swallowing it down. It's going into the stomach. It's binding to something called intrinsic factor that then goes down to the small intestine. And 18 inches is all you have to absorb vitamin B12. That's it. Do you know that you make 10 times more vitamin B12 than you need every day? In your own intestines, your bacteria are making tons of vitamin B12 and you can't absorb any of it. And you know why? Because it's on the other... Did I do that? There. It's on the back side or the colon side of that 18 inches. So after you get past that 18 inches of small intestine, there's the colon that's making a ton of vitamin B12. You can't even use it. You can't absorb it. So in that 18 inches, you can absorb vitamin B12. Well, guess what? If you have inflammation in there, do you absorb it? Very little. If you don't bind to intrinsic factor, if your stomach is inflamed and you have gastritis or ulcers or anything going on in your stomach, not enough acid, you don't make intrinsic factor, you don't bind it to the B12, and you can't absorb it down the road.
If you had stomach surgery.
If you had
sometimes the stomach and intestinal surgery will screw it up.
Yes, many of them will, and a lot of people that have bypass surgeries for weight loss, for example, they have to be really careful because they may need injections because they can become deficient in vitamin B12 and end up with unusual things. What does a deficiency of B12 show up as? Anything neurological, anything. Schizophrenia. I have cured schizophrenia with B12 shots. It shows up as bipolar disorder. It shows up as neuropathy, numbness and tingling in the hands and feet. It shows up as carpal tunnel syndrome. It shows up as foot drop problems. Or any neurological weakness that you can have is going to be made worse by a vitamin B12 deficiency.
And does stress really deplete that in the body?
Yes. Okay, so stress and vitamin Bs, yes. When you're under a lot of stress, you actually do use more B vitamins, and not just B12. B5 pantothenic acid is necessary for the adrenal glands to function properly. Yeah, that's not on our list. It's not a common deficiency. It's pretty easy to get, B5. It's a rare deficiency. B12, and then B6, B9, B12 folic acid. Those are the ones that are important for stress.
So leaky gut would set you up for B12.
Leaky gut is a potential, definitely, or irritable bowel syndrome, or chronic diarrhea, or Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel diseases. Any of those are an easy setup for B12 deficiency.
How do you take it if you can't take it?
Injections. Yeah. You can take it and you can actually absorb microgram quantities under the skin. You get like 30 micrograms. And you take a milligram and you're getting about 30 micrograms. So you do get tiny amounts. But one thing about vitamins is we use them, we store them, we have them in our bodies all the time. And when we take extra, what do we do with it?
Empty it out.
We flush some of it out, but we store some. So the liver stores vitamin B12. And this cobalamin molecule is a pretty big molecule. It doesn't go through the skin. They make skin B12 for the skin. It doesn't absorb very well at all. It's same thing, like tiny microgram quantities.
How about sublingual?
Same thing, same thing. What you're really doing, the majority of that sublingual is being swallowed down and going through the normal process. Only the shots are effective, and that's why they had B12 shots in the first place. Then that's been 50 years of B12 shots, and that's been known.
Doctor's order for B12 shot?
Yes, in most cases you do. It's not absolutely necessary, but if you're going to get it from a doctor, then you have to get a doctor's order for
What's the
it.
frequency of those kind of things?
The frequency of shots.
I mean, it's all about, I'm sure it's.
So I'm gonna go to that right now. So the way vitamins work in the body when we store them, there's a curve where if you're really deficient in it, you have kind of a rapid rise. When you take some, you get a rapid rise, and then you take the same amount as you get to the top of the curve. You take the same amount, and you're not storing nearly as much. You're excreting more and more and more. And this is true with minerals and vitamins and various substances that the body needs. So ideally you want to stay at the top of the curve. So with vitamin B12, if you're like deficient, then we usually do 9 shots, 3 times a week for 3 weeks, just to get you to the top of the curve, and then you can take oral ones. So it's not necessary that somebody gets shots all their lives, but people who've had bowel surgery, who've had resections of the distal ileum, actually do, for the rest of their lives, they do vitamin B12 shots for that reason, because they will never, even though they can take small amounts intradermally or transdermally, and sublingually, they can get tiny amounts. It's not enough to keep them at the top of the curve. They'll get deficient over time. The liver stores and reuses these things. This is amazing. The body is so amazing. You think you have to have a daily supply. And that's something I want to make very clear. We do not need a daily supply of vitamins. The concept of 1-a-day vitamin is marketing. It's not health. In fact, the research shows if you take a vitamin every single day, then you're going to absorb less and less and less of it, and you become sort of immune or accustomed to it. The body's like it's beautifully set up to allow us, when there's a whole bunch of something, then you don't have to absorb all of that. Yeah, we're good. There's a lot of that around. And when there's not very much of something, okay, step it up. Absorb more of it. So now, getting back to the toxicity issue, how do you get balance? The way to achieve balance is not to look up exactly what you need every day and do an exact amount every day. It's really just to take a lot and then none, and then a lot and then none. The body works best in every case. Everything that we do with our bodies works best when we have feast and famine. If you eat and then you don't eat. If you exercise and then you rest. If you're awake and then you go to sleep. Everything works best when we have feast and famine. We have a lot and then none. And it's the contrast that allows the body to find the level that it needs, that we need specifically. And what's really interesting is your body will find the level that you need in any given instance. So this is really interesting. Dr. Cathcart did studies way back in the 1940s on vitamin C. And he was using fairly large doses of vitamin C injected intramuscularly into his kids. Has anyone ever had a vitamin C injection in a muscular? Man, that's gotta hurt. It's an acid, I don't know. But he was using fairly large amounts, and what he found was, he used his own children, but he also used other people's kids too. And so when they had the measles, if he gave them injections of vitamin C, then the pox would disappear, the spots would disappear, and they'd be good. But if he didn't, when he stopped giving the shot, they'd come back again. So it wasn't like it was killing it and making it going like an antibiotic. It was just suppressing all the symptoms, the antioxidant. So it stopped all the oxidant potential from the disease process going on, right? Well, what's really interesting is when he gave it orally, the person could absorb 10 grams a day, right? And if you give more than 10 grams a day, then it doesn't get absorbed. It goes into the large intestine. The large intestine says, yuck, this acid is not supposed to be there, and you get diarrhea. Okay? So that's why vitamin C causes diarrhea. So but when people were sick and febrile, they could absorb 2 to 6 times more vitamin C through their intestines than when they weren't sick. The same person. So the body will absorb the extra vitamin C it needs. And the reason he did that was because of dogs. What they found was that dogs had a certain level. Dogs make their own vitamin C. They don't need it. They make it out of sugar. So their liver's making vitamin C, and we don't have that ability. Guinea pigs, primates, and I'm a primate. I don't know if any of you are, but I'm a primate. So we don't make vitamin C, and all. That's why the word guinea pig. That's where it came from, because the original research on vitamin C was done on guinea pigs because they didn't make vitamin C. So in dogs, when they're not sick, they make a certain level of vitamin C. And when they are sick, it's 2 to 6 times more than their levels of vitamin C in their blood. Their liver's making all this extra vitamin C because of their illness. So that was the theory. Then they go, maybe we need that. So the point that I'm making is that you can absorb the nutrients that are needed based on the need. And I can't tell you what you need. And you won't know what you need. But if you're doing something on an intermittent basis, a lot and then none, and a lot and then none, then you're going to get the amounts that you need, and you're going to be able to store the amounts that you need for the times that you don't have any. And then when you don't have any for a while, and the body's saying, whoa, I'm missing this, I need this, then your ability to absorb it will increase. And what does that do for you? Well, number one, it makes it much more efficient. You can take fewer vitamins. So Hilda, going back to our original story, has 2 trash bags full of vitamins, and she says, I spent thousands of dollars on these vitamins. I'm not going to throw them away. I said, okay. She had one of those big tubs for protein powder. You know those big ones? And I said, well, just dump up, there was only a little protein powder, dump that out. And take all of those half-done pill bottles that you don't need and dump them all in there, shake it up, and take 1 a day. Because why? Well, because they're all going to be mixed up, and she's not going to get the same one every day, and she's going to absorb it at a better rate. She's going to get better effect or better benefit from it. So she'll get all the benefits from it, in fact, more than if she took it every day. And it'll last her years, really. It'll last years, or 2 a day, yeah.
Dr. Saunders, didn't Linus Pauling say you could have up to 10,000 milligrams a day of vitamin C? And isn't it water soluble? Like, if you take 10,000 milligrams, you're just going to pee out what you don't need.
Correct.
So, but you were saying high doses are detrimental and cause you to be deficient in other.
Yeah.
Is that right? I mean, so
Linus Pauling took 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day, based on his research.
Okay.
Okay, so then the next thing that we're going to talk about. Okay, so next thing we're talking. I'll go into that now.
Okay.
There's something in vitamins that's very important. It's called synergy. Has anyone ever heard the word synergy?
Yes.
Okay, synergy is something that's non-mathematical. Actually, it is mathematical, but it's a 3-dimensional math. So in 2-dimensional math, 1 + 1 = 2. But in synergy, 1 + 1 = 100, or 1 + 1 = 1,000. And the reason is because if you take vitamin C, all by itself, you isolate vitamin C, take everything else away from it, and you say, how much vitamin C do you need? What does deficiency do? What does it take to get deficient? And how much do you need to function? You get a certain number of that isolated nutrient. But if you start adding bioflavonoids in there, guess what? The bioflavonoids and the superoxide dismutase and the uric acid and all of the other things combine together to have a synergistic effect where 10,000 milligrams is way more than you need when you have a synergistic effect of all of the other things, and you could live on, the recommendation is 60 milligrams is what the RDA is technically. And people can live very well all their lives on 60 milligrams as long as they have the other things in place. So
That sounds like a catalyst, like these things are acting like catalysts.
well, in a way they are, because they're reused and reused and reused. They're not destroyed completely. They're actually regenerated, many of them, by other things. You know, I was saying like alpha lipoic acid regenerates glutathione. So the synergy of these things working together, when you buy vitamin E, and it says DL-alpha tocopherol, okay, that is one isolated nutrient of vitamin E. That is not vitamin E. Vitamin E is alpha, beta, gamma tocopherols, and it's only the D form, and it's tocotrienols. And so when you eat a handful of almonds, you're getting a spectrum of vitamins that are synergistically working together to create an antioxidant potential that you're not getting from that pill.
Is that binding? Does it bind with each other?
They don't bind with each other. They just work in different ways. So Hilda, that was one of the things that Hilda and I talked about. I said, you don't need this gamma tocopherol. And she goes, oh yes I do, I read it, and it says how important this gamma tocopherol is. It's one of the minor vitamin E's. You have alpha's the major one, and gamma's the minor one. But it's really important, right? So she has to have a pill for it, right? And I said, no, you have to have food, and you have to get this vitamin from your food. So the spectrum is what allows us to function very well on the intermittent amounts of vitamin C, for example, or any nutrient that we have. So it's not necessary that we take these large amounts every single day. In fact, very nice studies were done with magnesium. Magnesium was a really cool study because they looked at why. So they gave a gram of magnesium to a whole bunch of people, and they drew their blood to find out how much of it they absorbed. So they have like an area under the curve, and they can say, okay, you absorb this much of that 1 gram dose of magnesium. They followed them over time, taking it every day, and the amount of absorption decreased. By 90 days, they were only absorbing 30% of what they had absorbed at the beginning. So they're only getting 1/3 of it, 1/3 of what they'd previously absorbed. So they asked the question, why? And there are two reasons. Number one, the body and the brush border that allows for absorption diminishes the enzymes that bring that nutrient into the body. That's one. Okay. Number two is the big surprise, and that is the bacteria in your intestines will proliferate on whatever nutrient you give them and will take it. Then you don't get it. Isn't that interesting? So is that a good reason to have like feast and famine, have a lot and then none, a lot and then none? If you're taking a small amount every single day, you're proliferating the bacteria, your absorption mechanisms are diminished, everything is diminished in your abilities, and the spectrum that you need of a vitamin E, for example, you're taking a lot of this DL-alpha tocopherol, and now you can't absorb the other parts that you need from your food because of the oversupply of this one isolated part of the nutrient that is not there. So does it make sense now why Dr. Walls, Terry Walls, I remembered her name, was able to cure her multiple sclerosis, not with taking pills, but with saying, how do I get those nutrients from my food? And then getting it from her food. She wrote a book about it, and one of the parts of her book is she requires fasting. She says you have to have at least 18 hours of no food in between meals in order to reset the system, so to speak. And so in her book, Terry Walls, W-A-H-L-S, if anybody wants to read it, it's a good book. Zinc is a common deficiency. And this is really important because a lot of men have enlarged prostate. Why? Lack of zinc, right? So iodine is a common deficiency. There's iodine. And if you don't have enough iodine, your goiter enlarges. You know why? It's being stimulated. The brain's saying, make more, make more, make more. And so it's making more glands, but there's no iodine to make the more. So this constant stimulation makes the gland enlarge. Well, guess what? The prostate does about the same thing. When you can't make enough prostaglandins, guess why they're called prostaglandins? Because they come from the prostate gland. Then zinc is required for that. Then you start getting the enlargement of the gland, and so zinc is an important part of that. It's not the whole thing. You get, if you have inflammation, it also contributes to that as well. Okay, iron we know about. That's iron. Anemia is fairly common, and that usually comes from losses somehow, like gastritis or irritable bowel or inflammatory bowel diseases. Losing iron, losing blood is a common way for that. And then potassium. Okay, potassium is a really important thing, but we don't supplement it very often because it's found in everything. But we were often told, don't eat salt, right? Sodium's bad for you. Well, guess what? Sodium is not bad for you. In fact, the research shows people who have low sodium diets live shorter periods of time. They shorten their lives by eating a low sodium diet. It's really, really important that you have enough sodium so that your glands work properly, your muscles work properly. Everything has to work on sodium. But it has to work on sodium in contrast to potassium. There's the intracellular is potassium, extracellular is sodium, and you have to have that contrast there. So the problem with having too much sodium is not too much sodium, it's a lack of potassium. You have to fill your cells with potassium in order for those channels to work properly, or else you end up with hypertension, is one thing, and a multitude of other problems on top of that.
So you can cause hypertension by not having enough sodium.
Enough potassium.
Potassium.
Yes, and not having
By
enough
not having a
balance of sodium potassium. Correct. Or magnesium and zinc, for that matter. If a lack of magnesium can cause hypertension as well. So that's
So
okay.
if somebody's having cramps, leg cramps, is it would it be magnesium or would it be?
Sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium are by far, those four minerals are by far the biggest cause of leg cramps. There are other reasons, there's neurological reasons, there's other reasons, but those four.
Deficiency.
Deficiency or imbalance in some way, yes. Deficiency usually because the body can't process it well. So, if you have enough potassium and you drink enough water, the body can handle, the average kidneys can handle 40 grams of salt a day. 40 grams. You could live on salt pork, and it's good. And some people do. But you got to make sure there's enough potassium and you're getting enough water to clear it out, to balance it. So those are the things that need to be done.
So-
Okay, what?
I was thinking of my situation was, because I had bad leg cramps, that was diagnosed by testing my blood levels of magnesium, so it seems like, and then they had, figure out how to balance it all.
Yep.
So would you need to be tested ideally rather than just try some?
That's a really interesting point, and that is there's two ways of testing. One is to draw blood, send it to the lab. Lab sends us a number, and we try to interpret the number. That's one way of testing, right? Another way of testing is take some magnesium. There's a powder called Calm. You take it at night, and you go, "Wow, I'm good. I didn't have any cramps." Or calcium. Sometimes the imbalance is the calcium. So you take calcium. So either way is a good test.
How about your bone broth? Does that have enough minerals and stuff in it?
Oh yeah, it's got enough minerals. You mean to prevent like cramps and stuff like that? Not usually. I've had people tell me that when they go in the bone broth, they need to add some calcium, magnesium most commonly. Yeah, I've had people tell me that. Restless leg's a different issue. That's usually a dopamine imbalance in the brain. It usually doesn't come from the legs. yeah, that's a dopamine issue. Different. It's a neurological problem. Different issue. So the big three that I think just like everybody needs to supplement. You can get your vitamin D from sunshine, except not in Santa Barbara. What? Are you kidding me? You can't get it? Well, I mean, like, we live in the sunshine state, right? Why can't we get our vitamin D from the sun here?
Because it is shining.
Because when the sun shines here, we're above the 37th parallel, so it comes at an angle. And the light that we need, the ultraviolet light that makes the vitamin D, is dissipated rapidly in the atmosphere. So we're at sea level, and the sun comes at an angle. During the winter time, we get almost none at all. During the summertime, you can actually make vitamin D between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. If you expose a significant portion of your skin to the sun. I had somebody come in who was a beach volleyball player, and like every day he's playing beach volleyball, doesn't use any sunscreen. Sunscreen will block vitamin D. And he doesn't have any clothing on except, of course, his shorts.
And he doesn't shower.
And he's sweating. There you go. He's showering. So I'll tell you. So he comes in and he says, "Oh, my vitamin D level is going to be high. I'm in the sun all day long, right?" 30. It was like 32, I think. It was like in the low 30s. Normal is 40 to 60. And his wife says, "There's no way." But then there's another issue. I don't know this, but there is another issue, and that is you sweat. The dihydrocholesterol comes out in your sweat on your skin. The sunlight comes and makes the vitamin D, and then it has to be reabsorbed through your skin over the next 24 hours-ish. And what if you, as soon as you're done playing volleyball, you go in and take a shower? Then you wash it all down the drain. And so that potentially could be the issue in his case. But still, he was low. You know, we think we're getting sunshine and not.
I heard that you need it on the back of your knees, that that's the best place for absorption.
Oh, really?
I heard it
So
was
where can we go on vacation and
Wherever you sweat. So a lot of people, there's almost always sweat there, so there's going to be more dihydrocholesterol there, and it'll be absorbed from there. It's thinner skin, so it'll be absorbed from there. So there's reasons why people would say that. The skin on your palms, for example, is so thick it'll take years to absorb through it. Not years, but it'll take a long time to absorb through it. The thinner the skin, the faster the absorption. So.
So where do we vacation with your vitamin D?
Any tropical-ish area that gets direct sunlight. In fact, in the tropics, from the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn, that whole area, you get plenty. And that's why there's so many dark-skinned people there in that area. The darkness of the skin absorbs that ultraviolet light, and they make less vitamin D. So and so people think, well, what happens to dark-skinned people then if they live in northern climates? And they actually looked at this at black people in Canada, and they were significantly lower in vitamin D than the white-skinned people in Canada. So who were already low items.
So what about sunscreen and all that we've been taught about?
Okay, sunscreen blocks vitamin D because it absorbs those rays. So if you're using sunscreen, you're not going to make vitamin D.
But if you don't use sunscreen, you get skin cancer.
Yeah, this is interesting. Skin cancer rates. If you look at Australia, so Australia had this huge campaign to stop cancer, skin cancer. It's totally preventable, and so they had this, like, what do they call it? Slather. It was 4 S's. You had to wear a shirt, wear a hat, and slather the suntan lotion on you, or a sunscreen on you. And so over time, over the next 10 years, what happened? The skin cancer, the total skin cancer rates went down because there was less basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma. But there was an increase in melanoma. Melanoma is the malignant one. That vitamin D actually, it prevents melanoma. So it's kind of ironic when you think about it. The two types of cancer that are removable, that are not malignant, were improved by that campaign. So if you look at the reports, they'll tell you, oh, skin cancer rates dropped dramatically in Australia when they did this campaign. But what they don't tell you is that if they divide them out, the melanoma actually went up.
That's amazing.
So,
Wow.
okay.
So better to get sun.
I would say it's better to get sun, better to get sunshine. Okay, so if you think of extreme northern climates where people really never get enough sunshine to get enough vitamin D, what do?
They go down to Mexico.
No. Who said that? Fish. They supplement. They're always supplementing with the cod livers and the fish that are where do the fish get vitamin D, by the way? This is interesting. From phytoplankton floating in the ocean. From southern areas, it floats up to the northern areas. The fish eat it, and the fish store it in their livers. And then the people eat the liver, and they get it. Yes?
There was a theory for a while, probably debunked now, but that the difference between Neanderthal man and Cro-Magnon was the fish spear. Neanderthals did not have a fish spear. They were living in Europe and under heavy cloud cover and not getting enough vitamin D. Cro-Magnon had a fish spear and was presumably getting fish liver, and all of a sudden he's much bigger and probably smarter too.
Yeah. Interesting.
There was a theory.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's.
Okay. Iodine. We don't have any way of getting iodine in our food. Okay? There's no iodine in food. They used to. There was a dough conditioner that was iodinated. It was an iodine dough conditioner that was used for preventing the caking of flour. And they stopped using it, and they moved to a brominated one. So if you've heard of brominated flour, that's to prevent the caking of the flour. But bromine is actually toxic, whereas iodine is a necessary nutrient. And I don't know why they made the switch. That must have been cheaper or something. But the only food is that. I wrote down the foods that you get it from. The only food that really has appreciable amounts of iodine is seaweed. So kelp, nori, sushi, seaweed of any kind is actually decent.
And if you want to know how to use it and recipes for it, come see your health coach, because I have a whole chapter on sea vegetables.
What about salt?
No, what about iodine?
Iodized salt. Thank you for bringing it up. That was my next point. Okay. So iodized salt has the tiniest microgram quantities of iodine. Barely enough. If you ate 4 grams of salt a day, of iodized salt a day, you would get enough to prevent goiter. That's what they made it for. It's really not enough because there's many glands in the body that require iodine. It's not just the goiter and the thyroid gland. When you're deficient, yeah, you're going to notice it from the thyroid gland. But before that time, other deficiencies will show up, like women need it, especially for the glands in their breast tissue. And if you don't have it, the glands enlarge, they get inflamed, and it causes breast cancer. So breast cancer rates can be diminished just by adding iodine to the diet. Significantly, 50%. It's quite dramatic. And most of the breast cancers that we see are not cancer, really. They're called inflammatory carcinomas. And so if you've heard of intraductal carcinoma in situ and all those are they're carcinomas. They're sort of precancerous conditions, and they should never be treated with chemotherapy, radiation therapy. But they call them cancer, so they just start treating everybody with radiation chemotherapy just for the heck of it. Yeah.
So how else can you get iodine if you're not into seaweed? I'm not, but
Okay, supplementation. So I had a woman from China who had a goiter, and it was fairly large, that she walked around with for 10 years. Multiple doctors that she saw said, "Oh, it looks like you got a goiter there. You should have that removed." Surgical removal or radioactive iodine removal. That's the only thing they recommended. In 10 years of getting bigger and bigger, pretty soon it's choking her because it's kind of pushing against her throat. So she had it surgically removed. But if someone had said, years before, just take some iodine. It'll shrink maybe 20-30%. It doesn't shrink all the way, by the way. Goiters don't go away completely when you take iodine. It shrinks the gland a little bit, but it doesn't go away completely. But she would have never had to have the surgery, and everything probably would have been okay. But even the doctors, even though it's been known for 100 years that lack of iodine causes goiter, nobody told her, just take some iodine and then you won't have to worry about it. They only recommended surgery and radioactive iodine.
Can you actually take iodine directly, like put a
Yes.
drop of iodine in a glass of water?
Yes. Iodine is soluble in alcohol but not water. And so the iodine preparations are alcohol. They're not very tasty, they're not very good, but and they're not very pure if it's the medicinal kind. So it's not usually recommended, except there's one called Lugol solution. And that is a water-soluble iodine. It's an iodide, potassium iodide, that's mixed with iodine. So it has both forms of iodine in it, which is a benefit to some extent, because a lot of people have like Hashimoto's thyroiditis is the inability of the gland to make the iodide, the salt, into the iodine form so that it can be used by the gland to make the thyroid hormone. And so having both of them is actually beneficial. So yeah.
Can you put iodine on your skin and then it can...
You can, and a portion of it is absorbed through the skin. The problem with that is, and people test that, by the way. They put a patch of iodine, they rub it on there, and then they time how long it takes to go away. But there's a lot of factors involved in that. It's a very hard thing to interpret, because a certain percentage is absorbed, a certain percentage is evaporated into it's called sublime. It sublimes into the environment. You don't see it, but it evaporates out. And the temperature of your skin, the humidity, how much you sweat. There's so many factors involved in that I don't even recommend it. You can do it, you can try it, but.
So it causes breast cancer. Does it also cause cystic problems?
Yes, well, and possibly, and very often that too. So there was Dr. Jonathan Wright had a patient with fibrocystic breasts, and it was painful, and every time her menstrual cycle came along, it was really, really painful. So he totally painted her with iodine, like this Lugol solution, and in a matter of hours, the cysts shrunk down and went away. It was that quick. It made a big difference. So yes, fibrocystic breasts. The first recommendation is iodine. Also, yes.
So how Fujiyama, that whole radioactive thing.
Yeah.
How worried should we be about our fish and our seaweed and our consumption of radioactive stuff?
The reason they recommend taking iodine for those kind of things is because what's coming out of a reactor, one of the things that gets into the body is absorbed readily by the body is iodine. So the other things like uranium, that's not absorbed very easily. You know, a lot of the heavy metals and stuff, polonium, all that, you don't absorb much of that. You don't get much of that. But this radioactive iodine that's coming out of these reactors is quickly and easily absorbed by the body. So to protect yourself from that, you take a lot of iodine so that your thyroid gland is completely saturated, and then you can't hold on to any of that radioactive iodine. You excrete it and it's gone. So that's the protection of it. So your question of how worried should you be? I don't know. As long as you have sufficient amounts in your body, then the tiny amounts that are coming from the fish and whatever is really insignificant. I would think it's insignificant.
So the seaweed doesn't absorb it?
No. The radioactive part, it has a half-life, and the half-life is not very long. It's a relatively short half-life. So even if it's in the seaweed, it doesn't last long. Yeah.
So does the seaweed help the enlarged prostate?
Prostate. The prostate gland is not that dependent on iodine. It's actually much more dependent on zinc than iodine. And so, in fact, I don't even think the prostate gland requires iodine.
So it's not like the...
Not like the thyroid or the breast glands in women. The ovaries need iodine. So women need a lot more iodine than men do. And that's why when you see goiters, they always look at women. They did a test on teenage women. They were all in high school in Wisconsin. This is recent. This is like 5 years ago. And 12% of them had goiter. And that's what's called the goiter belt, because that area, the soils have no iodine at all. But it was women. They always look at women because of that. Women really need more of it than men do because of the glandular issue.
Is there any reason if you have severe seafood allergies you shouldn't eat seaweed?
I don't think so. The protein, a true allergy is a protein based, and so the fish, seafood, and shellfish and all that are not going to have at all the same proteins as the seaweed, so I wouldn't think so.
So kelp is very safe.
So kelp should be safe, yeah, absolutely. Okay, selenium. Selenium we talked about a little bit. Very important for glutathione. It also is used in a lot of different enzymes in the body for making energy, for the thyroid gland. Thyroid peroxidase requires selenium, for example. And it is not found anywhere in the United States. So they say, if you look online, it'll say like onions and garlic have selenium in them. Pepper, yeah, they'll tell you that. But the reality is, yes, they do if they're grown in high selenium soils. And that was the problem when they did the original studies. They didn't realize that selenium wasn't needed by the plants, so they take all these tomatoes and they throw them in the hopper and they grind it all up and they extract everything out of it, and they say, okay, how much selenium is in here per unit, whatever measure. But it's totally dependent on the soil, totally, because the plant doesn't need it. So that's why you have to assume anything that comes from the United States is selenium poor, and therefore is not going to be helpful. Even if it says it's found in it, it's found in that food. It's dependent on the soil.
So would we trust the Brazil nuts that are for sale in the local market?
I don't know. They're not all grown in Brazil anymore.
Where do
Yeah.
they get the selenium that they make supplements with?
It's a mined mineral, so they use selenium sulfide or something like that. Yeah.
So could you buy like pepper from
Madagascar.
Madagascar or something like that?
I don't know. I don't know how much pepper would be required to get your 200-ish micrograms of selenium.
So the best way is to supplement.
Yeah. Yeah. The best way essentially is to supplement for all these, unless you're going to be eating seaweed and going to the tropics.
That, Lazy Acres has that, it's a cofactor of the iodine. You can buy iodine that has 3 different iodines. And
Yeah.
it has selenium and magnesium in the cofactor. It's not inexpensive, but it's,
Yeah.
you take 4 of them and it gives you that.
Yeah, see, that would be a decent supplement for a thyroid issue, for example,
What is
because you need selenium.
They sell iodine, and then there's an iodine cofactor. And the cofactor has selenium and magnesium in it, and it's on the end dial in Lazy Acres.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I suppose you're going to get to this, but each one of those had a certain amount one should take per week.
Yes.
So you're going to get to
What? How much you should take in each one?
How often?
Okay. So the next thing, the thing that I wanted to talk about was how often you should take your supplements. And the reason why it said, I have to go all the way back. Anyway, so for vitamin D, 50,000 units once a week has been the standard dose for many years. That's what the prescription dose is, 50,000 units. If you have rickets, it's 50,000 every day. But if you don't have rickets, if you're supplementing, then it's 50,000 once a week. So the way supplements are given, there's a supplemental dose, and then there's a physiologic dose, and then there's a pharmacologic dose, okay? So the supplemental dose is, I need this much, I'm getting this much from my food, I need a supplement to make up the difference. And so those are small doses usually. So vitamin C is 100 milligrams, the vitamin D is 1,000 or 2,000 or something like that. They used to have 400 because that was what the cod liver oil had in it. And that just supplements you up to the physiologic amount. And then pharmacologic dosing. I know then you have the physiologic dose, which is I'm going to take whatever I need. I don't know what I'm getting from my food. I'm going to take what I need. So those are the 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C and the 50,000 units of vitamin D. That's the, I'm taking it all, so to speak.
Playing it safe.
Yeah, playing safe, I guess. And then pharmacologic dosing is where you're taking even 10 times the physiologic dose, and that is to affect a certain problem or a certain issue. So some people have genetic diseases that require they take folic acid. Instead of in the 900 microgram quantities, they're taking 10 or even 100 times that dose, 9 milligrams or 90 milligrams, to get to a level where they can function, where their energy systems can function normally.
Will they always need that?
If they have a genetic issue, they may always need that. The ideal is to build up to a level, but in some cases they really have very low functioning enzyme and they need it for the rest of their lives. Some people do. So those are the different types of dosing. So what I gave there was the physiologic dose, and that's because you're not getting any from your food. 50,000 units of vitamin D once a week is a physiologic dose. It'll get you to a normal amount of vitamin D. I've seen it many times, I've tested, and I know it's there. Yes?
So taking 10,000 a day, like
day.
my doctor has recommended,
Yeah.
every day.
That's a physiologic dose. That's 70,000 a week.
But that means my body gets used to it and I shouldn't?
Perhaps. I don't know.
Because I've been doing that for like 2 years now and I've still got really low vitamin D.
Oh.
I'm outside a lot, but apparently that doesn't matter here.
You're taking 10,000 units a day and you still have low vitamin D? Yeah. And then I would do the weekly dose and do it in like 100,000, like two of the 50,000. That would be 100,000 once a week. That would be.
Sick or anything to take?
No, 40,000 units is 1 milligram. These are tiny, tiny doses that we're talking about here. This is not. It's not a lot.
Then you stop for a little while.
Well, not necessarily. You test and you say where am I? At this 100,000 units once a week, and that's what people do. Like when they travel, you take 50,000 units the day before you travel, 50,000 the day you travel, and the 50,000 the day after, and that prevents you from getting travel sickness.
For D.
For vitamin D, yeah. It also is 50% effective against the flu virus. If in the winter time you take vitamin D in the 50,000 unit dose once a week, it's 50% effective as opposed to the shots, the flu shots, which are about 3% effective. So the contrast there is quite dramatic as far as preventing the flu. Okay, so 50,000 unit dose, and then the iodine they actually got this from women in Japan. So the average woman in Japan gets about 12.5 milligrams of iodine per day, I think it was. I think it's 12.5 milligrams per day. And the breast cancer rate in Japan was significantly less than the United States, and so they say, well, I wonder why that is. And they say, well, maybe it's the iodine. And certainly the iodine has an effect on it. It may not be the whole picture, but so this 12.5 milligram dose has become kind of popular. And a daily dose is fine, but usually I recommend people take it a daily dose for 90 days to build up a level. And there used to be a test for this. Some people still do it, and that is you measure the urine iodine for 24 hours. So you take a 50-gram dose, and you measure the amount of iodine in 24 hours that you excrete. And if you excrete less than 90% of it, then you're still absorbing some and you need more, so to speak. And so because you'll excrete the whole thing if you don't need any at all. So that gets you to the top of the curve. So if you're taking the 12.5 milligram for about 3 months, 90 days, that gets you to the top of the curve. And then you just need replacement once a week and you're good. So that's why the once a week.
Somebody with active breast cancer,
Yeah.
would you still have them take?
Yeah, probably 12.5 milligrams a day. I would do that anyway. And then the last one was selenium. Selenium, it says 1 milligram once a week, and that's 5 tablets because selenium is toxic in high doses. So you don't want to take, so they won't make a 1 milligram dose because if people start taking 1 milligram every day, they can get toxic on it. So you can't find a 1 milligram dose. So you can do it any way you want, but the preference of doing it once a week is so that you can still absorb the other things like vanadium and chromium, trace minerals from your food. If you're taking selenium all the time in these relatively high doses, 200 micrograms, I know that's a small amount, but it's a relatively high dose compared to the trace minerals like chromium that's going to be in the food. It's going to inhibit the absorption of it. So
200 milligrams.
So 200 micrograms is daily is what's recommended. And so a better way to do it is 1 milligram once a week. So that's 5 of those 200 microgram tablets once a week.
You're taking all these on different days, or you take all on one day of the week?
Well, these you can take all on the same day if you want. With my kids, the way we always did it at home was on Sunday they got their fat-soluble vitamins, and on Wednesday they got their water-soluble vitamins. And we just put them out there for them, and they ate them, yeah.
There's a form of vitamin C that is fat soluble.
Lipid soluble, yeah.
Is that good or not good, or
The
it's easier to tolerate?
The reason they put it in a lipid form is that you don't have to actively absorb it. You can passively absorb the lipid form. So that's why they put it in. It's called a mycel that they put it. They encapsulate it in fat. It's still water soluble, but it can be. That's why it's better tolerated for you is because it doesn't require active absorption.
Some of the things said about it was that there's lots of vitamin C in cell walls, and that this version of vitamin C is easier to.
Yeah, it can actually sort of blend in with the cell wall and open up, and the vitamin C gets right in there. Yeah. But they do that with glutathione. They do it with several water-soluble vitamins that aren't well absorbed. Glutathione, if you were to take glutathione, you get very tiny amounts of it that actually make it to your liver. Because most of it, because it's 3 amino acids and they get broken down in the stomach and digested, and so there's very small amounts that are actually going to get into your liver. So that's why we do, in the office, we do glutathione IV when people need it. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.